started. So I'm Chris Cooney. It's my pleasure to welcome you here to our 21st week of COVID recovery and resources for you in the Metro South region. Just wanted to do a little housekeeping. We are recording this and it will be posted at our site, www.metrosouthchamber.com. And within there, you'll see a COVID recovery section, and this video will be posted there along with all of the others that we have covered. We want to remind you that there's a Q&A section down below and a chat area. Turns out that I go to both, so if you have a preference, just place your question there and we will get it to the panelists. They'll probably ask it, or if we don't have time, if we're out of time, we'll send it to them and ask them to respond directly. Many of our panelists have, over the weeks, followed up with folks individually, one-on-one, if they had questions about WorkShare or EIDL or PPP or any of the other acronyms and programs that are going to be mentioned today. I do want to just mention some of our affiliates and partners who are promoting this, just because we really appreciate them sending this out. Avon Industrial Park Association, the Bridgewater Business Association, the Brockton Area NAACP, the Campello and Montello Business Associations, the Cape Verdean Association, Easton Chamber of Commerce, East Bridgewater Business Association, the Haitians United, the Massachusetts Small Business Development Central Network, the Norwell, Pembroke, Randolph, and Stoughton Chambers of Commerce. In addition, the South Shore Women's Business Network posts these on the videos as well. So we want to thank them. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of speakers and we're going to cover a lot of ground. So we did post bios of most of our panelists down below, and we encourage you to read those. We're very impressed and very appreciative of the panel we've assembled here today. Starting off with the Mayor of Brockton. We've been on calls, Mayor, regularly. I know you've been out and about. I was leaving the office Wednesday and I saw you out with, it looked like a site visit from some type of mobile unit that you were talking with. And anyway, that's the great part of the job. The not so great part is, yesterday morning we were told Brockton went to red. Can you tell us what that means and how businesses can respond and be helpful?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. And I want to thank everybody. 21 weeks is amazing. And the information week to week, every other week now is invaluable to me as the mayor and to all the business owners that participate on this. And we're a red classification. We were yellow. We knew we were on the cusp. Dr. Rick Herman had shared with me the metrics. And, when we took the vote as a school committee, and I chair the school committee to go 100% remote, we were hinging in that direction. And I got a call from Lieutenant Governor Polito and Secretary of Public Safety, Tom Turco, as well. So we're red classification. What that means right now, 277 loss of life, 4,539 total cases. Our metrics per 100,000 population, 8.5 over a 14-day window. So red classification is the worst you can be. And I will be taking executive actions, written documents. I'm working with the law department. I have to out of abundance of caution to protect our community. Some people will be upset by some of the actions, but unfortunately my job as the CEO, as the executive, is to secure the community. So that will be coming in short order. But what it means in terms of like fall sports for high school kids, it's all canceled right now, unfortunately. So there's a lot of disappointment, but we need to try to control our own destiny. And right now, it's not trending in the right direction. Congressman Stephen Lynch was in Brockton the other day, and I asked him again about some federal financial resources, and the congressman is very optimistic the city of Brockton will reap some federal money coming in. He just doesn't have a hard time frame yet. The CARES Act money, I had a call with Tom O'Brien, the county commissioner, and the county treasurer, and then Greg Hanley, the county commissioner. We'll be getting our first round of money next week, which will be the city side, school side, and also charter school, New Heights Charter. But in terms of, I see Sheila's on today. I took a tour of Mass Hire yesterday, and again, wonderful event, and just top notch. What Mass Hire can do in terms of offerings, but also, voter registration, federal census information as well. So it was a win-win. And literally, I just walked across the street, the old Kresge building, and I was with Rob Corley in terms of taking a construction site visit. It's going to be first-rate commercial business downstairs. Upstairs is going to be high-end residential dwelling, and NeighborWorks is is doing that right now. And the beauty of that is that's a collaboration with multiple lending institutions, Eastern and Rockland and Harbor One. And, it's really a great thing. And one thing they said, and, I'm really proud as mayor that I decided to do this decision, is that project and that visit today would never have happened if I had halted construction like other mayors did in other municipalities in the Commonwealth. And we didn't. But I also want to tell you that I spoke to the construction folks today, and 25,000 hours of man hours and not one positive case over there is what they shared with me. They do it the right way, the safe way. And that's a win-win for Brockton. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful game changer on that block. And we're going to have some future development as well. But as you said, Chris, I am taking a 3 o'clock tour of 47 West Elm Street. I'm told it actually marvels and probably even surpasses high-end Newbury Street, Boston establishments. So I'm psyched. I mean, its occupancy rate right now is off the charts. And it's someone like a Jeffrey Onatol and some of the other investors that are realizing that Brockton is ripe for benefit and return, but also providing first-class for a first-class city. So we got a lot going on. I'm psyched to listen to all the guest speakers today, but I just kind of wanted to give you an update of where we are right now and what, unfortunately, I'm going to have to do in the near future as mayor to try to get us back to yellow and then ultimately green classification with COVID.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I know I'm tempted to bring up another 200 units that you're working towards with 19 Main and the old Hibernia Club there, and also the old furniture building. I mean, there's a lot going on right in the downtown, and they all happen to be in an opportunity zone. So it's a kind of a nice segue. We'll be talking about that today. So
yeah, Chris, just if I could just piggyback on that. So the city council, I want to thank them. They did accept the 2 ties I submitted for 19 Main Street. That'd been on the docket since Mayor Jack Units and Mayor Linda Balzotti, Mayor Harrington, Mayor Carpenter, Mayor Rodriguez, and now me. So it's going to be executed. It's happening, which is great. And also the old 28 Petronelli Way, where Marvin Hagler and Rock and Robbie Sims used to train there. That also was approved the other night with Concord Square Development and Ted Carmen. So a lot happening in Brockton right now. So let's keep it going.
it's terrific. Thank you, Mayor. And so I know not long ago you allocated $500,000 or so from the federal government from the CDBG funds to a program to help small businesses, veteran, minority, women in particular, and along Main Street. And I know you selected Sheila to administer this. She has such a fantastic history of managing these federal programs in a very comprehensive and diligent way. And so she was chosen, and she's been advertising this and been meeting with the businesses and collecting the information. Sheila, can you remind us, what these grants are, how much and for who, and how it's going?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to the mayor for allocating and dedicating these funds for really a great purpose. So the grant itself is really designed for those small businesses in the city of Brockton who have had detrimental effects from COVID-19. So for some of these businesses, it might be, I've had to close, I've had to purchase new supplies, I've had to reconfigure my business. It's really a Band-Aid to help them get through those challenges. So the application is online, it's through Google, and it's a very easy application. It is up to $10,000. And it can be used for a variety of things. As I said, supplies, new equipment, payroll, rent, utilities. Interestingly enough, the grant is up to $10,000. We've had some that have gone for less and have said, and we've even said, well, you only applied for $8,900. Did you want another? No, there's other members in our community that need those dollars. So we're actually getting some side information, side benefits from this program itself. Many of them are, it's a wide variety. We gave out 3 checks today to, one was a sole proprietor, one was a daycare center, and one was retail. So additionally, we've done automotive, we've done restaurants. It's really a wide breadth of businesses that are looking for it. So we do encourage more businesses to keep looking. As I said, not everyone has applied for the $10,000. So we we'll have the opportunity to go above the 50 that we initially anticipated. We are also looking at, we've had quite a bit of demand and interest from some of our larger businesses. So this particular program, as I stated, was really geared towards small business. With the interest that we've had from some of the mid-sized businesses, we're going to be taking a look at that and seeing whether or not we might be able to widen the scope a little bit to really help out some of those businesses also. So stay tuned for that. And Chris.
Thank you, Sheila. I think she
There we
lost
go.
her
Sorry
connection.
about that.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're all right?
no,
Okay.
sorry about that.
That's
To your
okay.
point,
Thank you. Okay.
we will have the information shared with you. It is on the mayor's website. It is also on the BRA's website in addition to ours. And I encourage anyone that has any questions to please feel free to give us a call. We'll be happy to walk through the application with you.
Thank you, Sheila. And I've seen some of the press photos of folks so happy to receive those funds so they can buy PPE or they can get some signage in place and some social distancing signs in place. And it's just really a great assistance during this time. So thank you for administering that. I'm now going to jump to Susan Whitaker, who's with the Mass Office of Business Development. Thank you. Susan is with us and going to give us an update from the governor's updates that are happening every other week now as well.
Thank you, Chris. Well, as you know, we are now in phase 3, step 1, and step 2 of the Commonwealth's reopening plan has been postponed indefinitely. So the rules of the road, as you know them now, are going to be here for a while. All of the sector-specific protocols have been updated for phase 3, step 1, and can be found online on mass.gov/reopening. Of note, the restaurant rules have also been updated. We've had a lot of conversation around this last week, which states that the alcoholic beverages may only be served for on-site consumption if accompanied by orders for food prepared on site. So there's just been a lot of talk about this, really because the administration wanted to ensure that bars that were masquerading as restaurants would be addressed. So the ABCC is going to be looking into that. So there was a lot of concern around that, so that's being addressed now with these new rules and regulations. The revised gathering order also took effect last week. I know this one has been a difficult one for folks to adapt to. That revised gathering went from 100 people to 50. So, but as the Reopening Advisory Board and the administration are making decisions, the contact tracing has really factoring in where are the spreader events, what things are being traced back to, and you're seeing those activities are really linked to large gatherings. So venues like bars and large public events where people are closely mingling are being pushed back to phase 4. So we're not going to be seeing things like that for some time. The travel advisory is still in effect for Massachusetts. This is for all visitors entering Massachusetts, as well as returning residents. So if you travel, we have identified on the state's website, and this is subject to change, the lower risk states. So if you're going to or from a lower risk state, there's no action to take. However, if you're traveling to a higher risk state, we're asking you to complete the Massachusetts Traveler Form, which is found online. And when you return, you're required to quarantine for 14 days or until you can produce a negative test. So you can also complete the test before you return, which you can do up to 72 hours. Employers are also being asked to reduce the out-of-state travel for their employees. and urge any of their employees to avoid taking any leisure travel to these higher risk states as well. The other update that we learned about last week is the creation of the COVID enforcement and intervention team. And this really aligns well with what we've been saying all along, which is really about compliance. So it's not about penalizing businesses, but rather looking to work with businesses to get them into compliance and really understand the expectations. So this is a collaborative, multi-agency partnership. It does include local public safety, local boards of health. We've engaged with local and state law enforcement, really because a lot of the rural communities just don't have the staff volume to be able to address what needs to be addressed. So we're trying to expand who's able to enforce some of these regulations. So it does include fines for violations of sector guidance, but again, the priority is compliance. So in particular, some support from the ABCC and the local licensing boards, really focusing on targeting messaging, having these campaigns to really ensure that people are aware of what the rules of the road are. So I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have. And again, the whole reason why Chris has this here on a weekly basis from the Mass Office of Business Development, we are here representing the Baker-Polito administration under Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Mike Keneally. And our role is to be a liaison for businesses and help them connect to any resources that the Commonwealth provides. So if there are any questions that you have for me directly today, or if there's things that I can answer offline, if you'd rather do that, I'll put my contact information and my colleague, Margaret LaForest, in the chat box, and feel free to contact us at any time because we're always here and available for you.
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm glad you brought up Secretary Keneally. So he's confirmed that he'll be with us on September 17th. He'll be part of a New England Real Estate Journal panel that we'll be hosting at 10:30 on that day, and we're delighted to have him, and we're delighted to have you. Recently, the job share, I know we talk about this and people don't know about it enough. Job share is a phenomenal way.
Work share?
I'm sorry, work share.
Yeah, okay.
That's why we're not talking about it. Work share is a phenomenal program that I know we've used here at the Chamber. I know a lot of small businesses are using. Someone came to me and said, are we able to, on the work share, are we able to put a shift on for 2 weeks and then have them go off for 2 weeks and then have a different shift in order to protect those shifts from a COVID outbreak if an outbreak were to occur? Would they still qualify if you had 100 people in a manufacturing site? You have 50 come in 2 weeks and then the other 50 come in the other 2 weeks. Is that permissible? I
think that it is, as long as it's the same group under the same guidelines. So you can't have, if so long as it's shift A is being reduced at the same rate, like if it's half reduced 50% and shift B is 50%, that's fine, as long as all the members of the shift are having the same reduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's it's based in health, but also based in the economy. They want to hold on to all their workers while also qualifying them for unemployment and the federal stimulus. So It was a creative way. And you and I have talked about work share, but I've never heard that interpretation of it. But it seems like some companies are taking advantage of that, and it's working well. Yeah,
it's a really tremendous program, and I'd urge a lot of businesses who are either looking to bring people back gradually or are trying to avoid having to do a massive layoff. I think it's a tremendous way to keep people whole, and then that way you have your trained staff who are ready to go, and you don't have to worry about trying to retrain people and bring them all back later when things come back, when things are going to be back.
They're going to be back, and you want your employees to be there with you. So please, if you want to talk with Susan about WorkShare, please reach out to her and she'll follow up with you. We're delighted now to have with us Wendell Davis. Wendell is the director of SBA for all of New England. And I can tell you, in the 31 years I've been working with Chambers and with the SBA, Wendell has been the most active in our region. I saw him in Plymouth not long ago, within the last 10 months. He was then, he came to Brockton for our multicultural event on March 5th. and here he is back again. So Wendell, thanks so much for being with us. I know you are everywhere and hearing a lot of things in New England, probably sharing with your colleagues nationwide. Again, I already sung Eli's praises because he's been a real asset to this group and helped a lot of businesses access funds. But welcome. What can you tell us about?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chris, for that introduction, and thank you for having me today. You know, I like being on calls with you and working with the Metro South Chamber, because I swear when I'm on your calls and in your events, I'm finding things that I can then take to the rest of New England, and it helps all of the states. You know, these are important conversations because the more dialogue we have, and you know, Secretary Kennelly or Commissioner Kennelly has had that open line of communication with the small business community. And I think that's just incredibly important, because the number one most important thing that we can do is hear from the actual small businesses and the small businesses that you represent, Chris, with the Metro South Chamber. And it's great to hear, you know, clearly the city of Brockton, the mayor, Sheila, Susan with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Again, you guys are ahead of the curve. So, you know, some of the best practices are being established, you know, right in your neck of the woods. Let me say this, Chris, though, you know, while the economic impact of COVID has been unprecedented, you know, it's literally shut down millions of small businesses across our nation. You know, the administration's response has been equally unprecedented. And I'm not just talking about the PPP loans. Let's look at that real quickly, though. The PPP loans, just in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, over $14 billion over really an 8 to 16 week period has hit the balance sheets of small businesses in Massachusetts. When you compare that, and I think comparisons are important to get perspective. In a good year, last year, we did about the SBA's flagship 7A program. We did about $350 million over the course of the entire year. And when you contrast that with what just happened over the last 16 or so weeks, $14 billion. Now that's a double-edged sword. So, you know, jumping on a phone call and letting folks know that the SBA, we're having an impact, and it's a direct, dramatic impact. At the same time, that also represents a lot of hurt in the small business community. And we understand that. But when you look at not only the PPP loan program, when you look at the overall federal response, which includes the stimulus checks, which includes what I call the unemployment kicker of an extra $600 per week, and the unemployment being extended to small businesses, the smallest of the small, the sole proprietors. We've done some preliminary data where in some cases that's doubling the reach of the PPP, because there's almost just as many small businesses or sole proprietors receiving unemployment as they are receiving PPP. I mean, these are impactful programs. When you add those all up, Secretary Mnuchin just the other day talked about how that represents 20% of GDP over the course of a really, really small time period. Again, comparisons I think are important. When you compare it with our last fiscal crisis, which was the 08-09 crisis, I think everybody probably remembers the term TARP. That was the Troubled Asset Relief Program. You know, it took the federal government 13 months to roll that out in response. And that represented, I was listening to a morning talk show the other day, business talk show the other day, and they referenced that represented 6% of GDP. So there was clearly an unprecedented effort to flood the economic zone with capital, with liquidity. And quite frankly, that's stabilized the economy, that's saved the economy. You can make that argument. With that being said, though, there's clearly there's still work to do. There's a lot of work to do. This is extending out longer than anybody thought it was going to extend out, even if you only go back 16 or 20 weeks ago. And I know the president wants everyone to know about the myriad of programs that do exist to help small businesses. And clearly the PPP program and the EIDL program have gotten a lot of press reports, and there's a lot of familiarity with that program. And Eli's been on your weekly calls to talk about that. But there's other programs like the DFC, which probably within the last 30 days, there was an executive order that was issued. And essentially the DFC, which is the Development Finance Corporation, they've been charged with implementing the Defense Production Act and the loans that are associated with that. So industries or products or supply chains that are critical to the security of the United States, they have loan programs that they've just ushered out over the last 30 days. And I can tell you, in working with small businesses, I have 3 in New England that have just filed applications recently. So if anybody in this call wants to learn more about that, I'd be happy to jump on a separate call or get the folks from the DFC on a call to talk about it. The other thing that we're doing a lot of outreach on is the Main Street USA program, which is being run through the Treasury. We've done a number of webinars on that. That is really a liquidity program, gap lending, if you will. If you're a business that is suffering a liquidity event, there's a loan program that Treasury has put out. It's a 5-year term, so it's not a long-term loan like the EIDL program.
We haven't heard a lot about this, so that's something that we'd like to cover more in depth. Do we have a link to that? It's called Main Street USA, right?
It's called the Main Street USA program. Chris, after we get off this call, I'll shoot you some of the splash sheets.
We'll send it out to all of our.
And you know what, Chris? We just did a webinar on it. The Boston Fed is actually in charge of the marketing nationwide for the program.
Yes.
And we just did an event with them, and I have their PowerPoint. So I'll forward that on to you. You can disperse that through your membership.
That's great. Thank you.
And just so you know, a couple highlights of that program. Again, that's a very specific program, but there's no principal interest payments in year 1. And it's interest only in year 2. Again, it's a 5-year note, so you can have a balloon note at the end of the year, at the end of that 5-year period. But it's really for that liquidity event. If you have contracts right now that you're fulfilling, but you don't have the liquidity to fulfill those, this may be the perfect program for you. Another program, and Eli may have touched upon, is the SBA's CARL program, which is the Community Advantage Recovery Loan Program, and that's focused on underserved communities that we've ushered out. And I believe that includes a 6-month period of no payments. They're forgiven essentially for that first 6 months of that program. And that comes with technical assistance. So I just want to make sure folks are aware of that overall federal response and trying to, I know there's a lot of just PPP talk or EIDL talk, but when you put it all together, it's an incredibly robust response. And you know, we're here to do whatever we can. And if any of your members have specific questions, you know, Chris, feel free to give out my email and my cell phone number. I'm happy to call and talk with them one-on-one.
Thank you, Wendell. Thanks so much. And I know you've got a great staff here in Massachusetts. I think there's 8 or 9 of them. To put out that volume of loans is just amazing. And I know up until August 8th, we were really focused on the PPP IDL. Now I think we're looking for phase 4, which is likely to come down the pike. You also just mentioned the Coral and the Main Street USA. I think that's going to get a lot more play. Eli, I know we don't have a lot of time because we want to get to the opportunity zone, and I was hoping you might jump in on either of you might jump in on that towards the end. But do you have any quick updates, Eli, for the resources for the USA?
Well, quickly, Chris, again, thanks for having me and having the SBA here every week on your program. A couple of programs that I do want to mention briefly. So we still have funding available through our Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. As I've mentioned before, the advances are no longer available because of the funding that ran out, but the EIDL program still has funding. So folks that did not take advantage of that program, you know, we were highly encouraging folks to apply. The approval process is now 2 to 3 weeks. So there's a lot more loan specialists and fewer applications, you know, in the pipeline. So those applications are getting approved a lot faster nowadays. In addition to that, September 27th is the deadline for any 7A loans, our traditional products, to qualify. So any new 7A loans that get approved by September 27th do qualify for the debt relief program. So 6 months worth of payments made by the government, you know, principal and interest. So whether it's, you know, expansions, acquisitions, any sort of an airball type of loan that requires an enhancement from the SBA will qualify for the 6 months worth of payments made by the government. So
you say that's new loans and existing loans, correct?
So existing loans already are taking that advantage of that unless they're in deferment by the lender.
Okay.
So borrowers don't need to do anything about the existing loan. So lenders and the SBA, we're working on the back, through the back channels to make sure that everyone's is receiving the benefit. But the new loans, only they get approved by September 27th. And that does include the Carl program that Wendell mentioned. In Massachusetts, we have one Carl lender, and their reach is the 4 Western Massachusetts counties. So that is, their footprint. We're talking with them. We're trying to get them to do more in the state, but we only have one Carl lender currently in Massachusetts. So
And who is that?
So that's Common Capital.
Oh,
Common Capital out of Springfield, Massachusetts.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you.
their footprint are the western 4 counties in Massachusetts. And again, that's the only approved Carl lender we've got. A short window of time. And like I said, we are working with them, closely with them, to make sure that, they can help out small businesses in need, especially given the intensive technical assistance that's available through that program. But, other than that, I'm here to answer any questions, PPP, EIDL related, traditional SBA lending. And again, appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much, Eli. I appreciate it. And I know we're going to put several of your links that you mentioned down below. If we have one for the Carl, let's get that in there. Just because they're in Springfield doesn't mean they can't do a Carl financing in Eastern Mass, does it?
Well, they can. It's a matter of resources. So they're a smaller, shop, similar to Seed that you guys have
Okay.
in Taunton, but they have a limited staff. I'm sure they live up to their name. They're just like us. They're small but mighty.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right.
So it's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists from Partridge Snow Hahn. They presented to the Chamber, if you recall, back in January of 18 at Stonehill College, I believe. It was at the Martin Institute. And we're delighted to have Jay Peabody and Russell Stein with us to talk about the opportunity zones. It was something that was gaining steam, and then COVID hit and kind of got back to the back burner. But we're hearing some creative ways how people are using these opportunity zones to maybe pivot staffing to a new location and or to take advantage of the 6 months of free financing on the 7A or 504 and be able to free up some capital and then maybe purchase a building and help make a building financeable. So in order to kind of get more into that, and I wanted to be clear, Russ, are you also a CPA?
No, I'm a tax attorney.
You're a tax attorney okay, so you have the number side and the law side, and then Jay, you have a law degree, right? And
Correct.
And your bios are both down below. So anyway, who's going to go first? And
I'll kick off. So thanks, Chris, for having us, and I know this is a robust audience, so we appreciate being a part of this. In terms of, I think, Russell, you're going to start sharing your screen at some point. Okay, good. So I know we're into this for 21 weeks, or sometimes I like to stretch it and say 6 months because it feels sort of like 6 months right now. And I know, we've been touching a lot of real estate transactions throughout the Commonwealth, and I can just assure everybody that bodes well right now for call them secondary or tertiary markets, so not capital markets. Because I know large brokerage at this point are saying, concerns regarding viability of large capital markets should end, and they're saying that should end with a vaccine. But I don't see that, and I don't think that is the case. I think there'll always be opportunity in capital markets, but with the shift in work environment, the hybrid work environments that companies are now rolling out, or non-traveling edicts that companies are now taking for at least through 2020 into 2021. The fact that most people don't really enjoy living in the city, which is extremely dense, or cities like capital market cities that are extremely dense given the health concerns. And I would say that those shifts all put together, and the cost, which really hasn't changed in the capital markets, there's the rent concessions aren't robust at this point. you know, there's certainly some landlords at this point that are considering their buildings and their asset mix and saying we really need to think about getting some tenants in there. But I can tell you the sublease market in Boston is booming right now because people are trying to get rid of the footprint they have. So my position on this is that bodes really well, like I said, for secondary, tertiary markets, and in this case, gateway cities. So because this chamber has a number of gateway cities, or at least one major gateway city that its constituents come from, we felt that it was important to talk about the Opportunity Zone because that program right now is alive and well. As far as I'm concerned, it is as an enhancement on a credit or the credit of a deal as it's ever been. So we felt it was important to talk to the chamber about it and just give you a quick refresher. So with that, I'll turn it over to Russell. I think this could go on for an hour-long presentation as we did before. We don't have that time. So we'll give you a high level, but know that we're here to sort of help and structure these deals to the extent that the investment is finding its way into your markets, which it is now and should continue.
Thank you, Jay. I know on our exit surveys last time, the specific examples were fantastic. I'm not putting any pressure on you, Russell, but hopefully it's coming.
We have those here today.
We have them with pictures. I think I'm screen sharing. Is that correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay, here's the typical tax lawyer disclaimer. We're not giving legal advice. We're just talking about tax issues. It's a Friday afternoon in mid-August summer. This is primarily a tax presentation, but I will try to keep you all awake through it. There's some nice pictures instead of words, so hopefully that'll help out a little. As Jay was mentioning, the opportunity zones are back in the news. They took sort of a hiatus when the quarantine really started, but people are now starting to realize that the areas that are really being hit hard economically because of the quarantine overlap with some of these opportunity zones. So there could be some increased potential for opportunities, both for real estates and for businesses. As Jay said, looking to move out of the Boston area or out of the urban area closer to the employees. So the shift away from the urban centers could create some opportunities for people to move into these qualified opportunity zones. The IRS has delayed some of the regulations, some of the timing in the regulations to make it easier for people to invest in opportunity zones until the end of this year. So that's helping out a little. And there's also chatter about extending one of the very important deadlines in opportunity zones. It's the December 31st, 2026 deadline. I'll speak about that in a little bit, but there's some hope that Congress, hopefully come the new year, will extend that deadline to allow people to take more advantages of the opportunity zones. And that relates to the 15% deferral amount, which I'll speak to in a moment. This slide basically just gives a brief overview of how we got to opportunity zones, the regulations. There's over 8,700 in the United States. Massachusetts has 138 tracts. Like to focus on the last two bullets, which people sometimes forget about. The second to last bullet that's highlighted is you can piggyback opportunity zones tax credits onto other tax credits, even local tax credits. It works very well if you piggyback it onto a TIF for real estate tax credits in local communities. So what you should view the opportunity zone is just one level in your capital stack if you're doing a real estate development, or one level in your capitalization of a business to allow you to get a better return on your investment. There's already $75 billion committed into opportunity zone investments, and with more than $10 billion already invested in opportunity zones. The $75 billion amount is from these big opportunity zone funds that have gathered lots of investors to invest in these types of projects. So how does a taxpayer benefit from an opportunity zone? The taxpayer there's basically three levels here. A taxpayer can defer and potentially reduce taxation on capital gains by using the eligible funds to make a timely investment in a qualified opportunity fund. That's the little piggy bank here. We'll call it a QOF, which stands for Qualified Opportunity Fund. And that QOF, which can be nothing more than a specialized holding company, that would invest in either qualified opportunity zone properties or qualified opportunity zone business. That's how the opportunity zones on a high level work. The tax benefits for it, there's three primary tax benefits. One is deferral of capital gain. So you have capital gain, you've sold some sort of asset, normally you'd have to pay taxes on it. If you reinvest that asset in, reinvest that capital gain amount in a qualified opportunity fund within 180 days, or for this year by the end of 2020, you can defer that capital gain until the earlier of when you sell the project or December 31st, 2026. That's the date that people are hoping may be extended. So you wouldn't pay any capital gains this year if you invest it. If you hold on to that investment for at least 5 years, 10% of that capital gain is going to be automatically excluded forever. You're never going to pay taxes on it. If you hold on it for 7 years, an additional 5%. Now, at this point in time, it's impossible to hold on to it for 7 years because as of December 31st, 2026, all your deferred capital gain is going to be immediately included in your income. So absent any further legislative action, any new investments into opportunity zones will really only be eligible for this 10% gain on this level. The real kicker is in the third tax aspect. If you hold on to investment in the QOF for at least 10 years, you get to exclude all appreciation from taxation. And I'll show this on, I think it's the next slide, we'll show the example. But any appreciation from the day you bought it until the day you sell it, as long as you hold on to it for 10 years, is completely exempt from federal taxation. The investment does have to be disposed of by December 31st, 2047. No idea where they came up with that date. Presumably the people who are running it are not going to be around, so they don't want to deal with it. So that's why they chose that date so far away. In Massachusetts, unfortunately, these benefits are not available to Massachusetts for Massachusetts income tax purposes for individuals. The Massachusetts income tax regulations for individuals are what they call uncoupled from the federal code. So they don't automatically include any changes in the federal code. But if a corporation invests its capital gain in the QOF, it is eligible. But for individuals, they won't be able to defer or exclude from any Massachusetts taxes. So this is how it works. The example is a taxpayer. She buys IBM stock, holds onto it, and then April 15th of 2020 sells the stock for a $500,000 gain. Probably shouldn't have used that date because that was probably one of the low points of the markets this year. Normally, a $500,000 gain would equal $119,000 potential tax based on a 23% capital gain rate. But instead, she finds a building that she wants to buy in an opportunity zone. She forms a qualified elective fund with another partner, elects to and invests that $500,000 gain in the qualified opportunity fund, electing to treat this as a QOF. As long as she invests it by the end of 2020, it is eligible. And the QOF itself will buy the building, and under the QOF regulations, it has to substantially improve the building. So unless they buy vacant property or property that's been abandoned for a couple of years, the key to this whole thing with real estate is when you buy a building, you have to substantially improve it. And the regulations basically say the substantial improvement equals 100% of the basis of the property that you buy. So if this building was bought for $500,000 and $100,000 of it was attributable to the land, in order to meet the substantial improvement, she would have to put in an additional $400,000 in improvement, because which makes sense for the goal of the program. It wants to improve the communities. It wants to bring people back into these communities, improve the buildings, so they have the requirement that you have a substantial improvement. The tax benefits that she gets, September 2025, which is after 5 years of her holding it, 10% of that $500,000 is automatically excluded from capital gain. Say she holds on to it till 2030 and sells it for $800,000, the $300,000 appreciation would be automatically excluded from capital gain, plus the $50,000 is excluded. So out of that $800,000, she's only paying taxes on $450,000 of capital gain. At this little mark here about ineligible for the additional 5% is because it is automatically included in income in 2026, meaning there's not 7 years before that. So she's only taxed on $450,000. There are a bunch of requirements in order to be eligible in order for that QOF to meet the tax eligibility. This highlights a couple of them. The main one is the capital gains have to be reinvested directly in a QOF. So if you personally sell something for a capital gain, you have to invest that money in a QOF directly. You can't form a holding company which will then form the QOF. You can't layer it on top of each other. Basically, the investment has to go directly into the QOF. The QOF itself has to have 90% of its assets only in qualified opportunity zone property. There are ways to structure it to make it 63%, but there's only 3 types of property that qualify. Qualified opportunity zone business property, such as real estate, qualified opportunity zone stock, or partnership interests, which is how businesses qualify as qualified opportunity zone property. There is a special rule for cash. If you keep too much cash in the QOF, you're not going to be able to meet this 90% requirement. So there's a little bit of a planning involved. There are some safe harbors. The IRS generally lets you take about 30 months in order to substantially improve the building. So in areas of that period, you can hold on to some cash to do the substantial improvement. But long term, these are not vehicles to hold a significant amount of cash in. And another diagram, this is what a quote basic qualified opportunity fund structure looks like. You have the investors, they form a QOF, which it could be an LLC, a partnership, a corporation. The QOF is really the holding company, and the QOF can either directly invest in property, it can directly invest in specialized businesses, or it could run the business through it itself. So this is not just for real estate, this is really for any type of business that goes into an opportunity zone. An ideal type of business would be like a restaurant. A restaurant moving into an opportunity zone can have 2 types of QOFs. You can have the QOF to hold the building, and you can have a QOF to run the restaurant. As long as you intend to hold on to it for at least 10 years, you can take advantage of the tax exclusion from capital gains on both levels. The qualified opportunity zone business property, I think I've covered most of this already. The QOF has to purchase or lease the property after December 31st, 2017. So unfortunately, it's not really fit for existing businesses or for existing property owners. There really has to be a transfer of ownership. You do have 30 months to substantially improve the property. If it's a business as opposed to real estate, there's not substantial improvement requirement. There's gross income and gross receipts requirement, where the active trade or business has to really have at least 50% of its revenue or costs in the qualified opportunity zone. Risks and uncertainty and other things to think about. There's always investment risk. These are long-term investments. If it's a bad investment to start with, an opportunity zone is not going to make it a good investment. If it's a good investment, the opportunity zone can kick it up a notch and make it a great investment. but there is a tax risk. If the capital gain tax rates go up, and right now it's about 23.9%, if in 2026 the capital gain rates go up to say 40%, which could be possible if it becomes ordinary income, then you end up paying more taxes by deferring your capital gain than you would have had to pay if you paid your taxes immediately when you sold it. That's basically a very high level outline of opportunity zones. Of course, it's a tax program, so the devil really is in the details. This is really just to pick your interest and bring it back up. There are a whole bunch of other tax developments that seem to be changing daily that I just thought I'd list out some of them. The top one, many companies may not realize this, but Massachusetts has an emergency regulation relating to non-resident taxes. If you have a company and prior to the quarantine, the employee went to your company's office in Massachusetts, but starting with the quarantine, that employee is living in Rhode Island or Connecticut or outside the state, under emergency regulations, Massachusetts is still considering that employee a Massachusetts resident for withholding tax purposes. New Hampshire hasn't been very happy about that. Whether or not it can be upheld through litigation, who knows, but it is the current rules. So some employees that you think may be non-residents are actually still residents, and that should be considered in some of your employment withholding taxes. Wendell spoke about PP loans. There is a lot of chatter about the deductibility of expenses. The IRS came out with a notice early on that said any expenses that are forgiven are not taxed, that are not treated as tax deductible expenses, which in effect sort of makes the PPP loan taxable. There's been a lot of chatter that they're going to try to correct that and allow you to take a deduction for those expenses. And then there's the other credits that people have been talking about. I'm not sure if you've mentioned them before. The employee retention credit to allow you to have a credit off of your payroll taxes, a refundable tax credit. Paid sick and family leave credit, giving a credit up to 2 weeks of paid and sick leave against taxes. The president did an executive order, I think a week ago, about employee payroll tax deduction. We're still awaiting Treasury regulations on whether and how that will apply. And then there's a whole slew of legislation just floating out there that hasn't been enacted upon. Restaurant Revitalization Act, Restart, Heroes Act. So all these legislations have some sort of effect on tax credits and trying to get money quickly into the affected communities to try to jumpstart the economy again.
Chris, Russell snuck that last slide in under my nose. I didn't know he was going to give us that broad tax update. So that's a typical tax move, a tax guy. So I guess that's a little plus you got out of this.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that got me thinking about a lot of other, the deductibility of PPP. You know, a lot of our folks on this call have received PPP. I didn't know about I knew about the paid sick and family leave in terms of, you know, employers, you know, not really loving the fact that they have to administer it, but it sounds like there's going to be a tax benefit there too. You know, as we were talking, I glanced over and the Dow Jones is just on the cusp of 28,000 right now. This is a good time to sell, maybe, right? If you're moving your offices out of Boston and you want to pick up a building in Brockton, or if you have a building in Brockton and your business is kind of paused right now, this is a good time to do a renovation, maybe sell some Apple stock or something and bring some funds down here. Is that what we're talking about?
That's a way to generate capital gains, yes. And then what you do with it, you don't have to actually take the exact same cash dollars that you got from that. But the amount of whatever capital gain you had, if you wanted to defer those taxes, you can throw them into an opportunity fund to try to buy a building or promote a business in that area. but it is a way to really hold back on paying your taxes this year on that capital gain.
So and we also think that with the shift of the workforce to the suburban markets, I mean, right now, if you have a capital gains, if you have capital gains you're sitting on, or you want to take advantage of what I consider sort of the up market, and you're a savvy business owner or developer, right now is a great time to buy that mill. You think about it, in Massachusetts and New England at large, land value is typically your material value in your asset acquisitions. So if you're buying something for X and you're taking out the land value because substantial improvements based on the property value, excluding the land value, it's not a heavy lift in terms of the commitment that you have to make to substantially improve an asset to have it fully qualified under the opportunity zone. So I'm looking at things like mill conversions to apartments as you try to manage the bed need for all those folks leaving the city. Looking at a building that's maybe not fit for modern manufacturing, repositioning it and moving in some of these manufacturers that right now are the king of the hill. If you look at the way our economy's changed with this, with the Amazon effect, I like to call it, I mean, it's bananas. Warehousing, industrial, I've never seen it so white hot in our markets. Cold storage is a real big one right now. And then, some of the retail and some of the other flip sides of it are really soft. But in a market like a Brockton, there's a lot of assets sitting in opportunity zones that could be repositioned with this type of program in mind. And then you layer on all the other state and even federal other tax programs or tax credit programs. And these enhancements become, I don't want to call them no-brainers. I was told once by a lawyer that I worked with and for, don't ever use the word no-brainer, but these become very nice projects.
Okay. So, I'm trying to create some examples here. I mean, if you're in Boston and you've got a commercial property and it's 37 stories and you're like, all right, I got some leases there. Maybe I should sell now and buy some 2 to 4 story mill buildings in Brockton and start my renovation. I can actually do construction in Brockton. I can't do construction right now in Boston because of the restrictions. You heard the mayor talk about that. That's made the difference. There's a lot of construction still going on in the city. Can we play that out a little bit? I mean, Eli, when can folks apply for a 7A loan for capital and to do a renovation or investment in the city, and be able to get the 6 months forgiven, plus tap into the opportunity zone benefits?
Very, very good question, Chris. And absolutely, they can if they occupy 51% or greater of their property. And of course, it's a commercial property, right? So we don't lend to individuals. We only lend to businesses and business entities.
Okay.
But absolutely, and as long as that loan is made by the 27th of September, and an additional 6 months worth of payments will be made by the government.
That sounds wonderful in this time frame, and hopefully some of these get extended in phase 4. We're going to, I think, have Russell or Jay or both back on our panel on September 17th, along with the Secretary of Economic Development. And these are the types of examples that we want to try to bring up to folks, because I think there's a lot of evaluation and inventorying going on right now of where people's employees are, how practical it's going to be to get back to business, whether employees want to come back in 5 days a week or could possibly just come in 3 days a week or 2 days a week, and whether there's some incentives, again, to invest in cities like Brockton and other gateway cities. I know we're kind of pressed up against the clock here. Any closing remarks, Russell or Jay?
Chris, can I mention something quickly?
Oh yeah, Wendell, go ahead, and then I'll just.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Russell and Jay, one, I want to thank you guys for bringing opportunity zones back to the fore. I think it's an important, subject matter, especially for cities like Brockton. But Chris, if I could add, the White House Opportunity Zone of Revitalization Council, they just updated their list of grants that are given some type of priority and opportunity zones. So they did it on July 31st of this year. And right now there's 316 federal programs, grants, and other types of programs that get some type of priority if you're in an opportunity zone. So just by way of example, I'm working with a community right now. We're looking at the EDA to provide a grant for broadband. The EDA can work with municipalities and not-for-profits, not with the private companies, but some of the land in this project that we're looking at has municipal-owned property. Also, the DEP has grants and programs that they get priority if they're in an opportunity zone, if there's a project in an opportunity zone. And I know in New England, the regional administrator in this area is focused on old mills in New England and revitalizing them. So if there's any specific project you guys want to run by me, I'd be happy to bring in the folks from the EDA, from DEP, from FEMA, or from anybody to help with that conversation and really take a hard look at whatever project may be out there.
That's terrific, Wendell. Thank you. Thank you for adding that and being on the call. Jay, do you want to wrap it up?
One thing I wanted to mention was, and it was far less important than what Wendell said, because that was really helpful, but there was dropped in the Q&A a question about could we get a copy of the slide deck, and the answer is absolutely. I think Russell has the ability to drop that into the chat area. We'd ask that you keep that not confidential, because it's not confidential. This is an open forum, but don't share it around the world. Some of this stuff changes on a very regular basis. So, to the extent that you're using it now, great, but the tax programs are ever changing. So call us if you have a question.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And Wendell, again, thank you for doing all you're doing for Massachusetts. And again, Eli's been fantastic. I just want to bring up, I mentioned that we're going to have the Secretary of Economic Development on the 18th with the New England Real Estate Journal Focus and Forum at 10:30. But on October 7th, the Governor Baker will be with us. And he has confirmed he was supposed to speak with us April 17th, I think. So he postponed to October 7th. We're hoping that that's going to do the ticket. That we'll have him be able to do that live, virtually live. And he's still signed off of that. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to talk a little bit about education and impact and long-term and year-end and state budget and all of that. And then, of course, on the 18th of November, it's the Chamber's 108th annual meeting, and we have the race director for Boston Marathon who's going to be a guest speaker. We usually attract 420 people to that meeting. We have I think over 200 tickets already sold for that. If we can be in person, we will be. If not, then we'll be maybe a combination of live for the awardees and then virtual for the attendees. But we welcome folks to tune into all of these programs that we're offering to help your business. Again, I want to thank our panel. We'll be back in a few weeks. We just had some time with the Small Business Strong program that was kind of headed up by Bob Rivers at Eastern Bank and the Boston Chamber of Commerce and several others. And they put together a great program of assistance of consultants, over 100 consultants from Boston mostly, willing to sit with small businesses who have questions about a lot of the things we talked about today, but other things. And they're doing it for free as a way to try to prop up and help small businesses bridge the gap here to the other side. And so they're going to come and talk about that initiative. They've raised, I think, over $10 million to help assist with a lot of this. And it was really interesting to be talking with Grace, who works for State Street, but she's a loan executive to this initiative. There's quite a few loaned executives. So anyway, we'll have a speaker on for that. We're hoping for the Friday before Labor Day. I know that's typically not a great day, but we happen to think this year a lot of people are going to be staycationing and will be home, and maybe they can pick up a little value for an hour on a Friday afternoon. We're going to try to go with that date. If not, we'll push it to the 11th, which is the Friday after. And I know, I think Monday, Russell and Jay and I are all talking about this event coming up on the 17th. So once again, thank you. Have a great weekend. Try to enjoy some weather outside before the fall kicks in. And thank you again. Take care.
Thanks.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye.
Chris.
Thank you, Emma and Lexi, too, for administering the Zoom call.